In this video, we'll have a look at the character rigging capabilities of Cavalry. Cavalry is mostly aimed at motion graphics, and as of today, it doesn't have a full character rigging system. However, it does have some tools, and as you can see, I was able to create a full animated character with a walk cycle here. We'll have a look at how this was done. I will show you how to set up an FK system and an IK system. If you're unsure what any of that means, I'll explain that in a bit. And we'll also have a look at a foot roll, for example, as you can see here, how to set that up as well. So let's get started. We'll first have a look at how to create IK and FK systems. If you've never heard of that, an FK system means forward kinematics, and I've got two setups here which represent an arm and a hand. So this is an FK system, and it basically means that I can rotate the shoulder first, then I'll rotate the elbow, and finally the hand. So this is useful for when the shoulder is mainly driving the motion. For example, when you're running, you don't really care where your hands end up. The shoulders are just moving along, and that's dictating the motion. And the other way around, inverse kinematics, just means it's inverted. So now we have the hand, and we can place and rotate the hand, and the shoulder and elbow are just following automatically. So these are your two systems. Depending on the situation, you will use a different system. We'll first create an FK system, which is very simple to do inside of Cavalry. I'll create 3 shapes. This will be the upper arm, lower arm, and the hand, for example. So when you've created these shapes, we first need to change the pivot points. So you go into the pivot tool and you move these to where the joints would be. So this will be the shoulder, this would be the elbow, and this would be the wrist. Second step would be to create some parent-child relations here. So all 3 shapes should follow the shoulder. So this would be my parent layer. Then the second layer will be a child of the first layer, and the hand will be a child of the second layer. And it's pretty easy to see the parenting structure here with the indentation. And now if I go back to my selection tool, when I rotate my shoulder, everything moves along. When I rotate the elbow, we see that only the elbow and the lower arm and the hand are rotating. And then finally, I can rotate the hand. So this will be your basic FK system, which you would use typically for the spine up till the head, but also you can use it for arms, depending on what type of animation you want to do. For the IK system, that's always a little bit more difficult because you need some automatic calculations. When we move the hand, we want the shoulders and the elbow to follow automatically. So Cavalry has the rubber hose system for that. And when you add it in, you get a basic line and a start and end point, which you can move around, and a bendy rubber hose in between. You can change the orientation by going into the rubber hose limb and clicking on the flip button here. If you don't like this rubber hose look for your character, you want a more traditional look, you can go into the basic line and lower the divisions here to 1. So this is a small tip I saw on Pepco Motion's channel. I'll link to that video as well. And now you have a traditional IK setup. Adding in a foot would be relatively easy. For example, if I draw this foot here, we just go into the layer system here and then add this rectangle shape under our end position. And now when I move the end, going to move along, and when I rotate the end, that's basically my rotation controller for the foot. If we have a more complete character, so let's say we have a body here, we would then child this start point to our body. I'll move this up. And now when I move my body around, the legs automatically follow. So this is your basic system. Let's add some complexity by adding a foot roll. So for a foot roll to work, we do need to have 2 shapes for the foot. So I'll delete this one and just quickly add in 2 cubes here. So 1 basic foot and then the tip. And let's rename these, because when you're rigging and you end up with a lot of shapes, it can quickly become very unclear what you're doing. What we basically want to do is we want to have a rotation over here, which then rolls the foot up. And we also need a controller for the whole foot as well. If you have never done this before, this is mostly a thinking exercise. It's not too hard to do technically inside of Cavalry. We will add a few null objects. So go to animation add null. And again, this one will be the roll. And this will be the general foot controller. The foot controller will go somewhere over here. And then the roll will go somewhere over here. So right where these two shapes intersect. And now it's mostly about setting up the parenting relations here. So when we rotate this up, we want the foot to go up, but also the entire IK rig. So inside of the roll should be the foot and the end point. Then the roll should be inside the foot controller. And the foot tip should also be inside the foot controller. So not inside of the roll, otherwise it will rotate along with the roll. And now when we test this out, we still have our basic controller here. But when we go into the roll, we can now roll the foot. And we can combine these two. So I can move this around. And that's your basic setup. So very easy to do. When you're done rigging and want to improve the visuals, there's a few things we can easily do in Cavalry. One of the easiest things would be to just use the basic line and go to the stroke settings, increase the width, for example, set the join style to round, and change the color. So let's say we want this character to be wearing some shorts. Then one easy way to do that would be to add an outline. When you have an outline, you just drag in the basic line of the leg into the input shape. Now we have an outline here. And if we go into the outline settings, we can increase the width. We can change the color, but most importantly, we can use the trim function. Then say, for example, 40% to give this character some shorts. And of course, you can go into the color settings here. Usually the easiest way to hide these connections is just to work with the same colors. So go into your fill and use the same color. And now we should have a functioning leg rig. There you go. This approach works fine for simple infographics type of characters. If you do want to create more complex characters with more complex drawings, for example, if I want to have some pants with pockets, then you want to draw these shapes and link them to your rig. And that's actually a little bit more difficult to do with this system. And that mainly has to do with the fact that we're still using the rubber hose system, which has a few limitations. So what I would normally do is I would just link the shape to the rotation of the hips. Now, already you can see that the hips are rotating in a different direction than the leg. That's something we can easily fix. So if we go to the start rotation, you can just go into the rotation here, right mouse click, add expression, and then just multiply by -1, which reverses the direction. Now we have a rotation that's kind of following the leg, but not entirely. I can show this by just dragging in a new shape. Let's give it a different color. And let's hide the outline for now and link this to the start rotation. Select this and drag it over here. So now if I select the foot controller, we get something that looks almost right. but it's not completely aligned with our leg, as you can see. Especially when we stretch the leg, it's very obvious, but even when we're just rotating the leg, you can see that it's not completely aligned. And this has to do with the fact that we're seeing the rotation from the rubber hose. So if I go back to the rubber hose limb, the basic line, set this back to 50 divisions, so we have our rubber hose legs again, you'll see that it's actually this rotation that we're following. So this is just a limitation of the hack that we're using, basically by using this one division. And there isn't really an easy way to just link shapes with a few clicks. You can use some different approaches. For example, if we remove the shape from our hierarchy and go into the deformers, you can achieve results with, for example, the pathfinder, but it's pretty difficult to get it to align correctly. And yeah, it's just too much trouble. It's not something you would want to do with a full rig, where you would have to go through this process for every shape. So this is definitely something that I hope arrives in a future update of Cavalry. So there's an easy way to link shapes to our IK systems. When we return to our rig, you'll see that this rig uses the same systems as I've shown before. So the leg uses the exact same system. The arms use an IK system as well. You could have done this with an FK system, but I wanted to see if I could do some things with the shoulders. And then the body just uses FK, so you can rotate it like this. That's usually how body animation is done, just with FK. That's basically it. Of course, you would have to link the legs to the lower body and then the start point of the arms to the upper body. You can see that here. Of course, it gets pretty lengthy for a full character with 2 arms, 2 legs, but the ideas are exactly the same. There's one thing I had to add, which was a constraint for the neck. When we go to the neck here, if you put this all in a hierarchy, everything will go on top of each other, and the neck should be behind both the upper body and the head. So just to make sure that it's drawn behind, I've added a constraint to the neck. So the neck is placed lower in the layer hierarchy, and it's using a transform constraint just to follow the position of the neck in the rig. So that's one way you can, when you're working with FK at least, it's easy to link objects to certain parts of your rig. Cavalry has a few other cool features that are useful when rigging and animating. One of them is the control center. I've already set this up, but it's very easy to do. You just go into, for example, your hand controller. Let's say I want to add the scale there. You right click, add to control center, and it pops up here. The position and rotation have this blue circle to indicate that they are already inside the control center. And this is useful because it allows you to quickly see everything you want to animate. For example, here's the roll controller. I don't need the position there, so I only have the rotation. And that's a very nice way to have an overview. There are also tabs here. So currently I only have one tab, but if you have multiple characters, you can have a tab per character. So very useful when you're animating especially. And I'm, for example, selecting the controller here. Let's say you want to see the position or the rotation. That, of course, takes a while to find. So one thing you can do is to use the animation layer filter. Shortcut there is U. And then you instantly jump to that foot controller. And if we switch, for example, to the hand, you see it doesn't automatically update. It does update the graph. If I hit U twice, it jumps to the hand controller. That's a little bit annoying when you're animating. It's not too much of a hassle, but ideally you would want that to happen automatically. In terms of other things we can do in Cavalry to improve our rig, of course, there's a lot of automation, and one of the cool things is the color array. So let's just close this. So I've got a color array here. If you're not sure how to link the colors to the shapes, that's just click and drag. So if you go to these dots, just drag them on, say, okay, stroke color, and that's already happening. This is very useful because obviously if you want to make changes, especially if you have characters with a lot of parts, it's going to take you a while to go inside all the shapes, make all the changes. And here you can just do them globally. So for example, here shoes, let's just give them a different color. And it updates all the shapes that use that color. This is a very quick way that you can create variations of characters, because often in infographic animations, you have one or two rigs and you use the same rigs with different colors. And that's very fast here. So let's just go ahead and change the color, maybe change the shirt. And yeah, it just takes a few clicks. And now we have a different character. Maybe change the hair a little bit, shape, and you can easily create variations of characters within a few minutes or even less. So this is a really nice feature that not all 2D animation software will have. I very briefly want to mention animation. So this isn't an animation tutorial. If there is interest in that, please let me know in the comments, and I might do some tutorials on that in the future. But I will say that I was pleasantly surprised at how good the animation tools are inside of Cavalry. So the graph editor is just really nice. It's responsive. It's easy to work with. Selecting your controllers, like I mentioned, it's easy. The only thing is having to press U twice to make the switch here. That's really the only thing that bothered me. Otherwise, it was a very smooth experience. To summarize, yes, you can do character animation and character rigging inside of Cavalry. The core systems of Cavalry are really strong, so the graph editor and the referencing system, that's all very suitable for character rigging and character animation. There are some obvious things that are still missing inside the app, so I hope we'll see those in the future.